With a smug grin and a mocking gaze, she points at him, pleading and begging him to go on and throw one of his usual fits. And honestly, she can't stand the thought that he's her childhood friend. And it was in that moment that something deep within him shifted, that something in the depths of his soul snapped. Takayashiki Rua is not your average girl. She's one of the hottest idols at the moment, while also being the granddaughter of Takayashiki Taizo, the chairman of the Teiken Group, Japan's ruling corporate giant, making her wealth and influence far beyond any normal person. In other words, she was a real-life princess in action. On the other hand, our main protagonist Suzuki Kazuma is just a run-of-the-mill guy. He's gloomy and plain with no friends to his name, but most importantly, bro is maidenless. He's who we'd call a loner, sitting at the very bottom of the social food chain. His only defining trait and achievement in life is being able to call himself the childhood friend of Rua. Believe it or not, he spent his whole life as Rua's shadow. Like he was Igris or something. But that's never been his desire. He doesn't want to be special like Rua. All he ever wanted was something simple, a real connection, friends, a girlfriend and a normal life. But he didn't just come to this conclusion suddenly, as he actually tried to express those feelings to her. But it took a turn for the worse. With venom dripping from her voice, she asked if he was stupid, that he should know his place like the worthless, gloomy loser that he is, as his only worth in life is being her childhood friend, nothing more and nothing less. That role alone used up all his life points, and he should get it through that tough skull of his, as her words ring through his ear that he should know his place. The words that she repeated to him all these years, they weighed on him like a burdening curse, but even then, he couldn't help but long for a normal life. It was then, in the spring of his first year in high school, that he sat by his desk at home, shortly after receiving a text message from Rua herself, requesting that he meets her at the station the next day at 3 p.m. Since Aya and some other friends had planned to go to karaoke, asking if he wanted to go. He figured that this Aya person must have been Hiragi Ayaka, the flashy girl from school who oddly enough he never spoke to. Confused, he wondered why him of all persons, and as if he were answering his thoughts, mentioned something he had said in relations to wanting friends, but most importantly, a girlfriend, further encouraging him that the best way to do that would be to join an elite group like theirs, encouraging him to take the first step. As his eyes glistened at the opportunity, he thought that this would finally be his chance to change, and he desperately wanted to. He dressed up the best he could and even went to the barber to get that sweet fade. It was finally the moment of truth, and right as he pulled the handle of the door, he thought to himself that to become a new him, in order to finally change. The room burst into laughter as they taunt him for actually showing up. How gross it was. They even mocked my boy's fade, mentioning how he smells like he just got out of the hair salon. Plus they're clowning his fresh new jacket. All while Rua laughed the loudest, mockingly asking them to stop as he really did try his best. Yet Aya, her friend, sat quietly unamused. Kazuma stands in silence, not a single word left his mouth, and as he drowns the sounds of all the laughter in the background, he realized that it was all just a setup. Rua stands to her feet and asked him what was wrong, as he just seemed to be standing there awkwardly. She cheers him on, begging him to cry in front of everyone, as she had bet 10,000 yen that he would have. Ignoring her plea, he whispered under his breath, requesting that she answers just one question. If he had done something wrong, desperately desiring to know what exactly he had done to deserve this. And with that devilish smile of hers, she answered that it was obvious, simply because he was her slave, urging him to go on, struggle, to put on a good show for her. And then it happened. She finally admitted the truth, that this whole time she couldn't stand the thought of him being her childhood friend. Kazuma's eyes widened as it felt like something just broke. As if chains were being snapped, he could finally hear the sounds of a bond being shattered. It was the last straw for him, and with those dead and soulless eyes, he looked right through her, mentioning that he felt the same, that they should cut ties, and she couldn't believe what she just heard. Infuriated, she asked him what exactly he thought he was saying. A loser such as himself shouldn't even be talking back to her. But Kazuma was right, as she was the one complaining after all. She continued her onslaught once more that he shouldn't mess with her, as unlike him, she has every right to hate him. But Kazuma's done. He clenches his fist and with a sudden explosion of rage, he slams it through the table. And almost as if it were nothing to him, he turns around facing the door in front of him, finally mentioning that it was settled, and closes the door behind him. Standing in shock, Rua's entourage talk about how lame Kazuma was, and how she shouldn't worry about him. Meanwhile, her friend Aya made an astute observation, asking if bro really broke the table. And as they gathered, they were all met with denial and disbelief that a human could possibly do such a thing. All while Rua stands afar off, shook with rage, unable to grasp how it was a piece of her confidence could be shattered by someone like him. And while standing in place, she screams that she'll never forgive him for breaking off their friendship. All while Kazuma, on the other hand, thinks how refreshing that whole experience had been for him, as the world itself seems to be glowing. He wondered why he had always allowed her to control him this whole time, as he'd much rather face high school alone than sell his soul to a beast wearing human clothing. But deciding to move forward and no longer living in her shadow, Kazuma finally felt free. That same night, we get our first glimpse of the man pulling the strings behind the mighty Taikai group, Takayashiki Taizo, and with a stern demeanor he stares at the pages before him. But that all changes when Rua calls out to him from afar, and his whole mood lightens up. She goes on to mention how Kazuma has been mean to her today, as he threatened to break off their friendship. But her statement catches the attention of the beauty standing idly in the room. Rua's cousin Takayashiki Kikura turns in disbelief, asking if what she had said was true. Rua confirms her suspicion by reiterating that she couldn't believe it herself, as she never once thought Kazuma would oppose her until now. Still not convinced, however, her cousin Kikura mentions that maybe she had been the one to say something nasty, with Rua casually admitting to calling him her slave, and yeah, maybe she also said being his childhood friend was the worst. But they had already figured that that was what had happened, as it's only natural for him to be upset after being told that. But Rua doubles down, insisting she was only teasing him. Jealousy bubbles to the surface as she confesses that it's infuriating to her to see Kazuma trying to make friends and looking for a girlfriend, as the whole thought to her is ridiculous. But Kikura mentions that wanting more friends is actually pretty normal, but denying it all, Rua screams at the top of her lungs that it's not. After all, Kazuma always had her. The world's cutest Rua is always by his side, yet just the thought of him wanting to get close to another girl is unbelievable. And because of that, she believes it's only natural that she'd want to tease him about it. As in the whole world, she's the only one who understands him the most. Because get this, she loves him. And that's all Gramps needed to hear to switch sides, as he claims that it's indeed Kazuma's fault. But Kikura seemed to have been the only one convinced Rua was wrong and nudged her to apologize. But she stubbornly rebuts that since her cousin was once Kazuma's mentor, she could figure something out and make things right by having him apologize and confess that he loves her. And while he's at it, to add a kiss as well. Kikura couldn't believe how down bad she was and directed her focus towards her uncle, asking if he had intended for Kazuma to marry Rua, with him confirming that he did, since that's exactly the reason he had her teach him martial arts, as well as the arts of leadership. Plus, Rua had liked him, and a talent such as himself was one of a kind. Gazing towards her fan, Kikura agreed, claiming that she's never seen anyone like him before, as ever since he was in elementary school, his grades have always been straight 3s graded out of 5, purposely scoring a little over average in order to fit in, as all of this was done as part of his training to become Rua's shadow. But if he were to ever stop and choose to aim higher, then not just the whole school or country would be shaken, but rather the whole world. And if our boy wasn't suffering from success already, well, turns out he was always popular with the girls, as she's not even able to count just how many had been transferred out because they liked him. And as a result of that, he never realized just how popular he was. Hearing this, Rua stands proud as she claims that that's her Kazuma after all, while Chairman Takayashiki mentions that that's why he's a worthy candidate to take over his company. But Kikara saw much further, since now that he's cut ties with Rua, he no longer needs to hold himself back, and she couldn't help but wait for the moment when everything would spiral out of control. And it started the very next day. The halls of the Teikai Academy buzzed with tension, and right in the center of the corridor sat a single desk and chair that belonged to Kazuma. The message was loud and clear. He went against Rua, and this was his punishment. Of course, the ultra-rich Harris would stoop this low, just to prove how much of a cruel, spoiled human being she really was. Still, he didn't let it shake him. Instead, he calmly weighed his options. Option 1 was to drag the desk back to class and endure the ridicule. Or option 2, complain to the staff. But it wouldn't have been worth it since the school literally belongs to her grandfather, chairman of the Teikai group. You see, this isn't just any academy. This is Teikai Academy, a school that cultivates S-class talent, where elite students from across the nations are recruited under a scholarship program to become the best in sports, arts, and academics, you name it. If you excel, you don't pay a single yen. But make no mistake, because this place runs on a hierarchy, a real-life castle system, complete with upper and lower ranks. And sitting at the very top of the throne, Rua, the self-proclaimed princess herself. So yeah, option 2 was out the window. Instead, Kazuma does something no one expected. He grabs his pen and quickly scribbles a quick message on the paper taped on the chair. He stated that he'll be studying on his own, and since it was a direct message from Princess Rua herself, then they should please count him as present. Surprised by his 200 IQ play, the other students stood in shock as Kazuma decides to head to another location, but also thought about how troublesome it would be if others found out about it. And upon his arrival, he reveals that it's an underground library that only he and a few others know about, as most students and some teachers are unaware that it even exists. But since he's a regular, the senior of the library committee lets him in sometimes. As he walks down the stairs towards the door, he thought about how he just killed time until classes were finished, thinking how he'd always wanted to live a normal life. But now that he's gone against Rua, he doesn't think he'll be able to make many friends or having a girlfriend for that matter. And as he grips the door handle, he wishes to now live quietly on his own, and opening the door before him, all he saw were yams. And it's in that moment that Kazuma had no idea about the story that was about to be unfolded right before him, as his goal of seeking an ordinary life was now filled with extraordinary girls, and his days were now far from peaceful. With a million eyes watching, a single girl stirred up chaos. The evil and conniving Rua began her live stream on a channel with over 1,091,000 subscribers. Damn! And today she's here to vent about someone who seriously ticked her off recently, since just the other day she went out for karaoke with a few girls from her class. Apparently, someone in Rua's karaoke group decided to kill the vibe mid-session and just left. Halfway through, I know, tragic. Rua leans in close to address her legions of subscribers, whom she affectionately calls her loyal subjects, telling them to listen up, since if the party's poppin', they should never be the odd one out to wreck it. Oh, and lastly, she has some huge news, announcing a brand new gig, and she's teaming up with a new voice actress named Minato Amane. They're not only working at the same agency, they also happen to attend the same school. Their debut CD is dropping soon, and the first live event is scheduled for next Sunday at the Shine Mall. And with that, Rua signs off as thousands flood the comments with admiration and support. But back to the present, Kazuma, now awkwardly standing in front of a door he shouldn't have opened, lowers his gaze and apologizes for intruding earlier. The young lady inside, clearly startled moments ago, bows her head slightly, introducing herself as Amane Minato while also apologizing for raising her voice so much. But our boy, feeling guilty for barging in, admits that he should have not, asking if she too had heard about the secret spot from the head of the library committee. When she had answered yes, he figured he wasn't the only one and decided to wait outside, giving Amane the opportunity to change. A few minutes later, Amane opens the door and gently invites him back in, still apologizing for the wait. But Kazuma can't help but ask the question that's burning on his mind. Why was she changing in there, and why in her gym clothes no less? Amane explains that she was just looking for a quiet spot to rehearse her singing and dancing. And as it turns out, she's a voice actress preparing for a big upcoming event. That's when the realization hits him that she's from the entertainment world, just like Rua, another elite handpicked by the academy. He glances around and notices a oversized mirror Amane brought with her, clear evidence of her dedication. But it also made him curious because why wasn't she in class? Amane's eyes drop since this morning when she arrived at school, she found her desk and chair in the hallway, accompanied by a sign that read, "No seat for you." Kazuma freezes. He's heard this before. The setup, the humiliation, and suddenly her teary eyes from earlier makes perfect sense. Just then his phone buzzed with a new message. No, multiple messages. All from Rua. She's demanding to know where he is. Worse yet, she's asking if he saw her newest video. She might just reveal his name in her next live stream and let her fans hunt him down. Unless, of course, he brings his pathetic little desk back into class and beg. And just from the look in his eyes, you could just tell he was disgusted. Kazuma turned his attention back to Amane, but still puzzled. Since if she was really one of Teikai's special scholarship students, then why was she going through all this effort? But even though Amane is a voice actress, she's far from popular. And according to her, she knows exactly why. It's her face and her voice. But you already know my boy couldn't let her talk like that. He had to dig deep in his wrist bag. Mentioning that he isn't able to see her face properly because of all her bangs, but he thinks her voice is pretty cute. And just look at her. Look at her face, bro. He got her out here blushing. But to her, it's absolutely not true. Since there are a ton of other people out there with better voices, and compared to Rua Takayashiki, she's nothing. But even so, someone like her ended up forming a unit with Rua, which might just explain the harassment she's been getting lately. During Rua's live stream yesterday, Amane got hit with a flood of comments, stuff like, if Rua teams up with someone like that, then her reputation's doomed. Harsh words from Rua's fans, but hey, pigs do attract pigs. But it begs the question, why is she even deciding to team up with that pig anyway? And she couldn't believe what she just heard, warning him that he can't just be calling her that. Since if someone heard him bad-mouthing Rua at school, it would be bad news. But since it's just the two of them, bro's allowing his intrusive thoughts to run wild. Amane confesses that it wasn't her decision to make in the first place, but rather the agency. Since she's seen as plain and gloomy, they thought she'd make the perfect supporting role behind Rua's spotlight. Cruel, yeah, but that's just Teikai music for you. They do anything to push Rua, and my god, bro, how many company do these people own? Kazuma doesn't doubt that the whole desk and chair situation was Rua's idea, and even though it was the agency's plan to pair the two, Rua probably can't stand the thought of being paired with someone beneath her. And before he could even complete his thought, she stopped him. She's okay with being her background support since it's a rare chance she's been given. So at the very least, she doesn't want to drag anyone down, but instead give it everything she has. And her words absolutely moved my boy to his core. He asked if that was her reason for coming to the library to practice, and when she had given a resounding yes, he couldn't help but smile to himself, admiring how cool she seemed to him. And with that, he mentions how he'd like to keep her company. Though, to be completely honest, all he really can do is give feedback from the perspective of a complete amateur, and asked if it were okay with her. Before he could even finish, Amane's eyes lit up. She gently took his hand and smiled as from now on, she's counting on him. And for a moment, just seeing her close up like this, Kazuma realized something. This girl is way cuter than that pig Rua could ever hope to be. Time flew by, and before they knew it, it was already lunchtime. And Amane had been practicing non-stop since morning. Kazuma started to worry she might be dehydrated, when suddenly from down the hallway an obnoxious voice yells his name, and right behind him was none other than the witch herself, Rua, as she asked where the hell has he been this whole time. And you could just tell, look at him, bro doesn't want to be here right now. Her verbal barrage kept going as she pressed Kazuma, asking why he was ignoring her. She even noticed that he blocked her on Messenger, but then delusionally thought to herself that maybe he isn't able to look directly at her because of how beautiful she was. But bro walked right past them like my dad walking out my life. And that's when dude grabbed his shoulder, asking what the hell was up with his silent treatment. And all it took was one look for Kazuma to break down this man's whole character profile like he was Batman or something. Because of that, we now know this dude's name is Asano, and he's the baseball club's promising scholarship student. As well as how bro must be some bum to be hanging around Rua instead of practicing. Hell, he should take a page out Amane's book. But looking at him too long had bro's blood boiling, especially since he wasn't saying anything. And so he pulled back his fist, ready to swing, and god damn! I didn't know bro had ultra instinct. He had Asano wondering if he was punching air, but Kazuma was finna lay it on him thick. He was staring death itself in the eyes, but he was too baffled because when did he get behind him? And now he's looking like a clown because he missed. They wondering if he weak or something. And hell, Kazuma wanted to have some fun too, asking bro if he's out of shape or something. And just as he was about to try again, Rua stopped him right in his tracks, since the only one allowed to seriously mess with Kazuma is her, and they only get a chance to if she gives them permission. Otherwise, no one should be laying a finger on him, and he should know his place. And just like that, the whole corridor went silent. Kazuma finally looked at her for the first time in their entire exchange, and you could just tell she's been waiting on this all day. But instead of reacting how she hoped, he called her out, asking if she really thought she did something cool just now, but instead decided to set things straight himself by declaring that absolutely no one was allowed to mess with him. Since he doesn't care who they are, he just wants them to leave him alone. Rua fell to her knees, eyes shimmering, heart pounding. She was gone. That line, that confidence, it hit her like a cupid with a bazooka. To her, Kazuma had never looked cooler. A whole week has passed and best girl Amane seems to be hard at work. But mid-practice, she spun too fast and nearly collapsed. That's when Kazuma swooped in, catching her just before she hit the floor. She apologizes since she keeps falling each time, but he reassures her not to worry about it, since he wouldn't want her getting hurt before the real thing. Starstruck, Amane couldn't help but think how amazing Kazuma was. He could be all the way across the room, but as soon as she trips, he's right there to catch her, but bro's just trying to play it off like he's not real life Bruce Wayne. But to her, it's not true, because ever since that day, he's been watching over her and encouraging her, not realizing how much it had helped her. And once again, she just wanted to thank him. And you could just tell from his expression, no one's ever said something like that to him before. But yet again, he tries to deny it. And almost as if nothing had happened, he turned his focus to her performance. Since wouldn't it be best to just walk back to center stage instead of doing a spin? As she always seems to lose her balance when she does. But to her, it just wouldn't look the best that way. So instead, Kazuma recommends jumping back in one move. Since if she used the strength in her knees, then she'll of course be able to casually flip in the freaking air. Like, is bro using backflips to get the huzz now? Like, what are you doing talking about C like this, bro? You better sit down. And of course, something like this is impossible for her, but most importantly, what the heck was that? And she's right, normal people can't do that. Also, bro's grades must be off the charts, but nah. Because ever since he was in elementary school, he's only scored above average. But changing the topic once more, Kazuma thought about how her posture seemed a bit off. But no matter how hard she tries, she's never been able to fix her slouch. And as usual, bro's putting that brain of his to good use, mentioning that maybe she should take advantage of that slouch of hers, mimicking something cute like a purring cat. And she just went along with it, giving him all the right poses and angles, and he can hardly handle all that cuteness. And it seems that somehow, it's finally clicking for her. Kazuma recommends having her designer make cat ears and tail to go along with her outfit, and she was fully on board until she wasn't, as she wouldn't be able to use it for her performance with Rua, since it just wouldn't match well, along with the fact that she's supposed to be a background support. Kazuma took a moment before asking if that was really okay with her. But since her singing and dancing isn't necessarily her specialty, she'd actually prefer he watch her practice acting instead. After all, she is a voice actor. She desires to perform as an anime character, and that's why she's giving it her all now, hoping that it'll lead to other opportunities one day. And Kazuma couldn't help but think how positive she was, especially when she speaks about voice acting. She seems so full of life. He confesses how he felt envious, as he doesn't seem to have any dreams or goals to aspire towards. When she asked if there wasn't anything he wanted to become, the only thing that came to his mind was that he wanted to be ordinary. A life that he could be proud to proclaim that this was who he was. And even then she believed in him, since if it was him, she had no doubt that he could attain the very thing he wanted. And that's all he needed to hear as he smiles in appreciation for her kind words. Feeling a lot closer to him, Amane took the opportunity to ask a more personal question. Since the other day, well, she heard that he had gotten into a fight with Rua and thought that maybe it was because of her. He reassures her that that wasn't the case, but being persistent, she mentions how they were childhood friends and how she must be putting him in a tough spot. But he doesn't consider her a childhood friend anymore, and that's all she needed to hear. She steels herself to make a confession. She stutters at first, but proceeds to ask if maybe he'd like to... And the witch herself appeared on the scene, asking what the hell were the two of them doing in such a cramped space, as she gets ready to unleash her attack. All hell breaks loose as Rua bursts into the secret library. She'd heard Kazuma was here, but she hadn't expected him to be with someone. She asked why the hell was he with this trash voice actress in the first place, as she's nowhere close to being as popular as she is. And just like that, the insults started flying, calling Amane literal crap and stupid. Rua finally pieces it all together. This is why Kazuma's been slipping away after school. It's all because he's been meeting up with some girl. And just the thought of it was enough to bring her to tears. But who's gonna tell her we don't care? She's not letting it go though, because Kazuma should be beside her instead. Amane, trying to de-escalate, puts all the blame on herself, saying Kazuma was just helping her out. But the moment she says his first name, Rua's ears twitched. She storms over, grabs Amane by the collar, and pulls her close. Because who the hell gave her permission to call him by his first name? Instead, she orders her to know her place and call him Suzuki instead. As getting close to Kazuma? Well, to her, she's a million years too soon. She even went as far as to bet that beneath those bangs of hers, she'd be ugly. But boy, was she wrong. Like, look at them eyes, bro. It's almost as if someone had gut punched her. She asked if she had shown Kazuma that cute face beneath her bangs, and immediately pulled out duct tape out of God knows where to slap those bangs back into place. But having enough, Kazuma called out to her, demanding that she cut it out. Since aren't the two of them supposed to be a part of some group? And though he might be right, Rua thinks she's just a supporting role anyway, so she can treat her however she wants. But Kazuma wasn't having it. That so-called sidekick of hers has been training every single day just to hold her own against Rua, so she shouldn't get in her way. But his actions only confuses Rua, since why was he taking Amane's side and they're clearly childhood friends? Kazuma thinks differently as he stands by those who work hard. He had to let her know again that they're not childhood friends. Bro, is you deaf? And she could just feel this man's bloodlust seeping through his skin. She struggles to get her words out at first, asking if he was still mad about the other day, as what she said was just a joke. And bro was confused. A joke? She low-key traumatized our boy. And how many people has she hurt with her so-called jokes? She's in high school, man. She needs to grow up and know the difference between what's okay and what's not. Like, she's the one who needs to know her place. And his words had her shaking in her boots. And without waiting for a response, Kazuma turns, walking right past her, signaling to Amane that they should leave. But turning to face him, she declares that she's way cuter than Amane, and there's no way she'd lose to some trash tier voice actress like her. And before she knew it, they were already out the door. While outside, Amane lowers her gaze, apologizing, thinking it might have been her fault why Rua got upset. But Kazuma reassures her that she doesn't need to apologize, since it just gave him a perfect idea, as they might be able to throw Rua off if they poke at her oversized pride. He's calling it the Iman Yan dance operation. After a bit of browsing at a nearby convenience store, Kazuma handed Amane a cute black cat earpin and asked if she had a YouTube channel by any chance, requesting that she wears it and uploads her most recent cat dance, as he sure will catch people's attention. But Amane, just like me bro, she barely got any subscribers and doubts her video would get any attention. Kazuma puts her mind at ease since he has a plan to help with that. His only request is that she trust him. His confidence was enough to calm her nerves. And after a brief pause, she nodded, but Kazuma wasn't done. He asked if she'd be okay with lifting her bangs when she recorded the video, as she's seriously cute, but just the thought of other people looking at her face makes her anxious, and hiding behind her bangs help her to relax. Curious, Kazuma asked if her agency ever mentioned anything about it, but it also makes sense why they wouldn't, since her appearance suits the support role image they were going for. Kazuma, piecing things together, think that was probably their plan all along. They should have gone solo from the start, but as it turns out, that is the plan. After the upcoming event, the group is disbanding. Amane said it like it was no big deal, but Kazuma couldn't hide his disgust, thinking how showbiz must be dirty, while Amane thinks it's only natural since the agency is owned by Rua's grandfather. So of course they'd favor Rua more. Plus, when it comes on to popularity and beauty, she thinks Rua's way out her league. And because of that, she wonders if going up against someone with power and status as Rua, if it was really okay. Hearing that, Kazuma finally understood. Her lack of confidence wasn't some character flaw. It was because of her environment, nurtured by an industry that hammers down anyone that stands out too much. Whether it was school or showbiz, Amane had always been surrounded by people too afraid to lose their position. People who tear down others just to be standing out. No wonder Amane's confidence is so low. Calling out to him using his last name, Amane asked if he were childhood friends with Rua, and how she seemed to like him a lot, but to Kazuma it's just annoying at this point. But also he wanted to let her know that it was okay for her to call him Kazuma instead. Amane lit up, glowing with excitement. She mentions that it would make her really happy if he called her Amane as well. And look here bro, he did it effortlessly. And yo, why are you blushing? You just told him he could call you that. And with her newfound determination, she looked up, mentioning that she'll do her best for the video shoot coming up. And before anyone could blink, the video was live. A bright chirpy Amane introduces herself as the voice actress performing the Amanyan dance on a channel with 41 subscribers. Then she danced, and not just any dance. We're talking backflips bro, probably the same move Kazuma taught her last chapter. At the end, a little breathless Amane returned to the camera, as she will be performing live this Sunday, and if anyone watching was free, they could stop by. She also made sure to ask everyone watching to subscribe. Makes me feel like I should be telling y'all to subscribe more, but hey. Watching from his phone, Kazuma couldn't help but think how cute her whole performance was. Yet he did notice she got a few hate comments from Rua's fans, but among them were some real viewers. He decided to check Rua's channel in the moment, not because he was into her, but solely for gathering information. And this girl is crashing out, calling every name known to man except for Kazuma's real name, which makes her threat last chapter about having her fans hunt him down just a bluff. But since then, she's actually been able to grow to 1.1 million subscribers, but continues to lose her mind over Kazuma not noticing how amazing she is. But with that, she brings her crash out session to a close, revealing that fake, warm and bubbly character that she displays online, claiming that what we just saw was emotional expression acting, as she was just channeling some of her recent frustration, thinking that maybe she too should get into acting. And with that, she signs off, leaving Kazuma to wonder what the hell did he just watch? But even then, he's more determined than ever, since if that's how she wants to play, then he'll crush her without holding back. Unfortunately for them, Rua's video racked up over 20,000 views in just 3 hours, while Amane on the other hand is only sitting at around 52 views in 2 hours. Still, the cuteness from Amane's video was really good in his opinion, which means all that's left is for people to see it, and Kazuma knew exactly how he was about to help her out. You see, before you lies the introvert Kazuma Suzuki, and though he's still gloomy and plain with no friends to his name, online it's a little bit different. Since in a certain mobile game that he plays, he's actually the vice leader of a pretty big clan. And all it took were a few days for Amane's video to hit over 500,000 views. She's surprised since it's only been 3 days, wondering what exactly did Kazuma do during that time. But for him, he claims he only helped spread the word around a little. But most importantly, if the video wasn't great, then it just wouldn't have gone viral. So it's really all thanks to Amane's hard work and talent that got her here. And just hearing that made her really happy. She even mentioned running into someone just then that told her that they were coming to her event. But Amane isn't the only one who's been promoting, since Rua has posters all over the place. But to Kazuma, all that's left is for Rua to take the bait. And boy did she latch onto his hook, because he reeled her right in. And of course, bro isn't at all surprised. Amane on the other hand seemed shocked that Rua's wearing cat ears. But getting straight to the point, Rua mentions that she saw their little video, but she's convinced that Amane has no chance of beating her, since this Sunday will be the cat ear showdown, letting everyone know exactly who's the cutest and most popular one around. But Kazuma already knew she'd go there. It was his plan last chapter after all, but he sees right through her. Just from the twitch at the corner of her lips, he knew she wasn't confident. And with everything in place, it was now time for Kazuma to unleash his attack. On the day of the event, Kazuma had made it early to show his support to Amane, but wondered why she was standing by another door when her dressing room was the other way. But apparently, Rua had instructed her manager to remove Amane, since she didn't want to breathe the same air as a nobody. So instead, she decided to camp out in a nearby storage room. But being optimistic, Kazuma thought that maybe this might be a good thing, since now they wouldn't be disturbed. He mentions that it would be showtime soon and encouraged her. He knows she's got this. He's been watching over her this entire time, and he knows she's improved a lot. Not quite convinced though, Amane asked why he was willing to go so far for someone like her, since she's been wondering about it this whole time. But it seemed to be a lot simpler for Kazuma. He feels as if their school is suffocating, always favoring their scholarship students. He knows it happens everywhere, but the way the lower class students are treated is way too obvious. But if someone like Amane, who isn't a scholarship student, could shine, he really thinks it could open up a hole in the wall their school has built. But to be honest, it isn't his main reason, because ever since he saw how hard Amane was trying, he desperately wanted to cheer her on. And digging into his bag, he remembered that he wanted to give her a custom-made cat ear. He wanted to find something that would suit her and thought that maybe it would be best to just make it. Taking it in hand, she thanked him again, mentioning that it made her really happy, reassuring him that she'll do her best. But that's not exactly how it's supposed to be worn. And while placing his hand on her face, he moved her bangs to the side, while letting her know that this is how she should wear it. Smiling as he figured that it would look great on her, Amane's whole face turned red, unable to get a proper word out. But Kazuma remembers a time recently when he got invited out for karaoke and decided to go to the salon for a sweet fade. How he felt like a completely different person. That's how it normally goes in novels, but not for him, since they all just pointed and laughed. But she's different. Amane Minato is someone who can shine. She has big dreams and she's worked so hard, but was interrupted by someone knocking on the door, since she's up next. And so reaching out his hand, Kazuma urges her to go and steal every single last one of Rua's fans, and grabbing onto it, she rushes towards the door, prepared to make the performance of a lifetime. The event begins, and Rua steps forward to thank everyone for coming. Standing before the excited crowd is everyone's favorite idol, the princess herself. The audience buzzes with excitement, especially when they see Rua looking extra adorable with cat ears perched on her head. Today, she's here to debut her new unit, Princess Royale and the Happy Servant. But speaking of her happy servant, Rua realizes she's forgotten to introduce her partner, the one who'll actually be singing beside her today, Minato Amane. With a bright smile, Amane introduces herself and kindly asks the audience to support their new unit. Rua's eyes widen when she catches the murmurs rippling through the crowd. How cute they think Amane looks. She can't quite wrap her head around it. After all she did was push her bangs up a little. But none of that really matters, since when it comes on to singing and dancing, Rua believes she's clearly the superior idol. And if that's the case, it's time to get the show started with their first song, Cute Dreamers. As the music starts and the voices fill the arena, the whispers return. But this time, they're all about Amane. The crowd wonders who's this charming girl beside their princess, and has someone this cute ever been on TV before? Isn't Amane way cuter than Rua? Even her singing and dancing seem to outshine Rua too, and it's in that moment that Rua can feel it. She's starting to sweat from all this pressure. To Kazuma, watching from above the stage, Rua has already lost. She must have thought that opening with her singing and dancing would guarantee her victory. But while Rua was busy playing the idol, Amane was practicing day and night, refining her performance until she shone with a dazzling charm. By the time the curtain rose, the battle was already over. Blinded by jealousy of the lower class girl who'd gone viral with her cat ears, Rua foolishly stepped into Amane's world, playing by her rules, just like Kazuma had done once before. And now, Rua was about to feel the same crushing embarrassment he'd felt back then. Kazuma notices something unusual. men in black suits weaving through the audience towards the back of the stage. He slips away, cutting through the section marked no entry. Determined to see what's going on, we cut to one of the suited men frustrated that he hasn't been able to reach any of his teammates. He's running out of time, especially since the song is almost over. He decides he'll have to drag Amane off the stage himself, but Kazuma isn't about to let that slide, asking who exactly did this guy think he was about to manhandle. The man, too focused on his mission, doesn't even notice his fallen comrades lying behind him. He wants to know exactly what happened, but Kazuma's the one who's asking the questions here. He quickly noticed that this man is a part of the Takayashiki's family's security, and if Amane didn't deliver as a supporting act, they'd been ordered to remove her immediately. Once Kazuma confirms this, he moves in an instant, too fast for the man's eye to follow, and with a single precise strike, the man crumbles to the floor, and it seems that their security has gotten sloppy lately. Wasting no time, he slips back towards the arena, relieved that at least for now, everything seems to have worked out. To Kazuma, this was Amane's big moment, the one she'd fought so hard for, and he absolutely refused to let anyone ruin it. But then it struck him that even if they did manage to drag her off stage, it wouldn't have mattered. Everyone here had already been moved by her voice. Amane was finally shining, and no one could stop her. Taking a deep breath, Kazuma cupped his hands and shouted that she could do it. The sound of his voice filled Amane with a burst of fresh confidence, but on the other hand, it completely threw Rua off. She took one wrong step and almost broke her goddamn ankles, and before she knew it, she crashed, hitting the stage face first. And just like that, the event people would soon call the fall of the idol Rua ended in Amane's victory. By the next day, every major entertainment outlet was reporting on Rua's spectacular performance, carefully skipping over both her fall and Amane's stunning debut. But that was typical of Teikai music, dirty tricks and damage control as usual. Still, in the age of social media, there was no stopping the truth. Rua's fall was going viral everywhere, and Amane's name was on everyone's lips. Amane was showered with praise from every direction, and for Kazuma, that was enough for him. Amane was finally getting the attention she deserved, which meant it would take a lot more effort for him to stay by her side. He knew for a fact that Rua was furious. The official news ignored her fall, but the clips and memes all over the internet didn't. Meanwhile, no one could ignore Amane anymore. At this rate, her star would only rise higher. And when it did, Kazuma knew his very existence would be an obstacle for Rua, the so-called ruler of the school. So for now, he decided he'd fade into the background, quietly watching Amane's success from afar. But just as he turned to leave, Amane's voice cut through the chatter. She weaved through the crowd until she finally caught up to him. She bows, greeting him good morning, but she wasn't done yet, because right after catching her breath, she asked if after school he'd help her with practicing again. Kazuma was confused since the event was already over, but Amane explained that she'd gotten a call for a new audition for a new anime. Another agency had reached out to her directly, and she thought about leaving Rua's agency to chase after her dream of becoming a voice actress. And this time, she wanted to practice with Kazuma by her side. Just as he opened his mouth to respond, Amane pressed a finger to his lips. She didn't want him to call her Amane anymore. From now on, she said softly, only he was allowed to call her Amenyan. The crowded hallway was filled with whispers, but before anyone else could react, Rua had broken her silence. Since how dare she do that to her mans? Kazuma noticed that ever since she'd pushed her bangs up, Amane really had changed. And maybe she was right. Maybe it was his fault. He'd been the one to give her this newfound confidence after all. and leaning in closer, Amane asked in a whisper if he planned on taking responsibility. And that was the final blow. Rua could only watch as her man got snatched up right before her eyes, then fainted on the spot, while Asano somewhere in the crowd shouts that they should call an ambulance. After Amane's event concluded and June had arrived, she quickly rose to celebrity status, and sure enough, she was really busy every single day, having to balance both her new job and school. Even that small incident at the school entrance was enough to get people talking about her. As for Kazuma, well, he's the mysterious loner, who's somehow always surrounded by both Rua and Amane. At least, that's how everyone else sees him. But to him, that's fine, since he's finally living out his peaceful days. When suddenly, a few classmates' laughter nearby had caught his attention, as Asano tries to shoot his shot at Aya, claiming that if he could only date her, then he'd be ready to risk it all. But she's not buying it, since he's probably just saying that because he got rejected by Rua. And wasn't he saying a few months ago just how much he was in love with Amane? To her, he's too desperate to get a girlfriend, and at this rate, no one's gonna want him if he keeps it up. And while everyone teases him for being an open book, he claims that he actually really did mean it. After all, Aya's really pretty, a fashion leader, a top student, and the star of the dance club. So of course he'd actually want to date her. But all she did was laugh right to his face, as that's clearly a pickup line that he just used. Besides, she already has a boyfriend, and Asano damn near died from yet another rejection. It seems as if this was something everyone else knew though, as Aya's definitely the type of girl who isn't interested in guys who don't have a car or money. And our brother Asano's out here starving, like he needs this girl, claiming that he too has money, so he'd definitely be able to treat her to some tea. And that alone almost had her laughing in his face again, asking if he knew what it was she held in her hand. It was a new purse that had just been released this month, and her boyfriend had bought it for her without even asking for the price. So, if Asano had any plans to take his place, then he'd need to be able to at least buy tea 1,000 times. And that's when he noticed she was way out his budget, and finally decided to let it go, as she's all about her money and, well, looks too, of course. All while Kazuma sits across from them. They're known as the elite group, made up of top-performing students, but Aya was specifically known for her beauty and fame, and she clearly has no problem shouting at the top of her lungs too. But Kazuma couldn't help but notice that Aya just happened to be sitting on a desk that had belonged to someone else, and while taking a closer look, he noticed the young woman holding a book he had recently returned to the hidden library, and figured she must have borrowed it. Just that thought alone was able to make him really happy, as he's glad that it didn't stay there buried in dust forever. He knows it's a good book, and he could tell she really wanted to sit quickly to read it. And while taking a moment, Kazuma decided to approach Aya and mentioned that that wasn't a place to be sitting, and asked her to move. And at first her eyes widened, but had quickly turned into frustration, because how dare some loser try to act all buddy-buddy with her, mentioning how he was so annoying. But Kazuma don't give a damn. The bell was about to ring, so she should just go back to her seat. But she gets even louder, since there's still time. Plus, it's none of his business anyway. All while Kazuma thinks how stubborn she was, remembering her from when he had gone out for karaoke in chapter 1. She had given him a cold look back then as well, and it had him thinking that maybe Aya actually hates him. But whether she hates him or not, he has no other choice. And while scooping her up in his arms, he gently lifts her off the table, all while everyone stood there watching. And not before long, her whole face had turned red. But Kazuma was unfazed, calling out to the young lady who needed her desk, since now would be the best time to make a move. and as she rushes in to clean this girl's dusty ass cheeks off her desk, she thanks him, and with his objective completed, he gently lowers her feet to the ground. She stood there with her head tilted down, silent, until suddenly she snapped. A flurry of embarrassment and frustration flared across her face as she warns him not to mess with her, while also curiously wondering what was he trying to accomplish just now, and decided to lay it on him, because how dare he do something like that to her. But right as she was about to continue, Rua had stepped into the room, cheerful and wishing everyone a good morning, and in an instant, the place had gone silent, as if the one in charge had finally showed up. And while she approached Aya from behind, she whispers in her ear, asking what had happened, and if by any chance Kazuma had done something to her. And not wanting to mess with the psychotic woman who would clearly do anything for her mans, Aya quietly mentions that it was nothing. But Kazuma had to speak up, because how many times did he have to tell her that he doesn't belong to her, but rather that they're just strangers now? Shocked, Rua tilts her head down, asking why. Why does he keep saying such cruel things to her? As back then too, he kept siding with that garbage-ass voice actress, even though she was clearly thinking of him the whole time. But for the last time he mentioned that he only sides with those who work hard, and not with some lazy, arrogant pig like herself, and walked right back over to his seat. And since he had cut ties with Rua, Kazuma could finally do the things he wanted to do as an ordinary high school student. And the first thing he thought about was finding his first part-time job. But he seems to be unsure of what jobs would even suit him. There is this new maid and butler cafe that has a pretty nice pay. And now that he thinks about it, back when he was in middle school, he was forced to live in Rua's family mansion, having to learn how to clean and serve in preparation for having him serve their family. Sure, his new job might be a bit further than he'd like, but if it's an actual cafe, then maybe he'd be able to put his experience to the test. And while inside the cafe, it didn't take long for him to be hired on the spot, and apparently he'll be starting next week. As Kazuma sat there, he was surprised it was that easy, but his employer mentions how his gesture had seemed polite, so she's absolutely thrilled he was able to come by. Sure, their space is not all that big, and as a result of that, there's usually only 2 people serving at the front, while she's normally in the kitchen. But he actually shouldn't worry, because there's actually a very dependable senior who he can rely on. Plus, they're very easy to work with. And as while he made his way to the back to meet his dependable senior, he hopes that they'd at least be nice. And right as he opened the door, introducing himself, the young lady in front of him couldn't believe it, dropping her broom in the process, as she's unable to believe that their new part-time worker is actually Kazuma. All while someplace else, Rua thinks back to what Kazuma had said, and while pasting images of them on the wall, she mentions that she finally understands it now, that he's been testing her love this whole time, as from here on out, she'll do her best. Her furious eyes darted in his direction as she calls out to him. She warns him not to tell anyone that she's doing this kind of job, wondering why of all people it had to be Kazuma. After all, she'll never acknowledge him as her junior. But while Kazuma averts his gaze and looks elsewhere, she calls out to him yet again, wanting to know if her secret would be safe with him. But desperate, she asked why he was so quiet, and when she couldn't take it anymore, she shouted that she knew working hard while dressed as a maid was a bit weird, and if he wanted to, he could just laugh already. But confused, Kazuma asked why, since there's nothing funny about a person working hard. And while she blushed uncontrollably, she exclaims that someone like her didn't actually do much, and she only really took the job because the pay was good. But from the looks of it, Kazuma noticed her cleaning was actually pretty thorough,
as both the glasses behind the chandelier and underneath the chairs and tables were done really well. Not to mention the hard to see areas were actually pretty spotless. But yet again, she claimed that she didn't do it, that maybe some little kid did it instead. But if that was the case, then why is it that her hands look the way they do? Both her hands and knees are a bit dirty, and Kazuma wondered if maybe she had been kneeling down to wipe the stains on the floor with a cloth, and then shortly after went over it with a mop afterwards. How it was some amazing work she had done, and while she stared at him, she began to blush yet again, all while she grit her teeth, and shortly after shouted that he should just shut up already, and instructs him to go on and change his clothes before they open the cafe, since there's a lot she has to teach him before then. And as Kazuma stood there with a hopeful smile, he reassures her that he'll do his best. It wasn't long after that the cafe was now open, and as Aya made her rounds, she began taking orders for meals, and shortly after approached the family apologizing, as it seems they were a bit packed for the day, and recommends that they take a look at the menu while she tries to sort out their seating arrangements, and hands them back their change with a warm and welcoming smile. Surprisingly, Aya's completely different from how she is at school. It also doesn't look as though she's putting up an act, but it looks as though she's actually happier here than she would be at school. But that's enough of assessing Aya, since Kazuma also needs to make sure he doesn't get in her way at all today. As the evening came and things began settling down at the cafe, Aya lies slumped over their counter, feeling exhausted. Curious, Kazuma asked if there were always this many customers during lunchtime, and apparently that seems to be the case, but it always calms down during the evenings and onward. And it's then that he wanted to ask if she was actually a part of the dance club, and how rough it must be for her to juggle work and school. But springing up from the counter, she confesses with a smile that she wouldn't mess up, since she's a genius after all. But now it was her turn to ask a question. She wondered if maybe this was his first part-time job, although she wasn't able to tell because of how quickly he was moving. But all Kazuma really cares about is not getting in her way, but she insists that he hadn't at all. But in fact, she should actually be thanking him. But then quickly came to her senses and decided to put everything on hold, since she had been getting close with her enemy. But Kazuma doesn't even know why they're beefing, and it's simply because he cut ties with Rua, so it should have been obvious. And although that might be true, as for Aya and her friends, he actually holds no grudge against them. But what about that time he suddenly got angry during karaoke? How it must have been because he hated all her friends and herself as well. But again, he confessed that he didn't, and figured that it must have been because of that pig Rua why she still thinks that way. And when she finally realized it, she wanted to clarify if this pig he spoke of would be Rua. And it's true she used to follow her orders, but before she could even finish her thought, it didn't seem to matter to Kazuma anymore, since all that matters now was that he thought of her differently, genuinely respecting her. She's efficient and careful with her work, and that's why from now on, he'd like if she could teach him. And as she stood there in silence, she finally agreed to help him, as from this moment on, she would give her best, so he had better be ready. Grateful, he bowed before her, though a lingering question pressed on her mind about the man they had seen earlier. Apparently, during the visit of their last male customer, Kazuma had decided to step in. He mentions having wanting to ensure the customers had a great experience, but she already saw through his lies. She had been watching him the entire day, so she knows it's not like him to interfere with her work. And as he stood there, he thought for a while. He asked if she had realized that very same customer following her around. He was also a pickpocket who kept putting his hands in his pocket unnaturally, not to mention those suspicious eyes of his. And it seems Aya also had a strange feeling about this guy. But if that was the case, Kazuma asked why didn't she kick him out? as where did all that toughness she had at school go? And as she stood there, trying to get her words out, she mentions that it's because he's a customer. So she couldn't possibly say that, but he thinks she's taking it way too seriously. And if she ever saw him again, she should let him know so he could take care of it. She whispers a heartfelt thank you under her breath. And as she came a little closer to him, she noticed how kind he was, but was interrupted when another customer had entered the store. And as Aya turns to welcome them, it was none other than Amane, cheerfully entering while calling out to Kazuma. She had heard he was working part-time and wanted to stop by. But then Amane noticed something, since that person standing beside Kazuma looks really familiar, almost as if she had seen them somewhere before. And Kazuma picked up immediately. Aya had completely frozen up, as it seems she really doesn't want other people from school finding about her job, and mentions that it's probably just Amane's imagination. Also, he asked if Aya didn't have something she wanted to do around the back, and she gladly took that excuse to get up out of there. As time went on, Kazuma places a cream soda down and apologizes for the wait, while Amane cheerfully thanks him for her order. She couldn't help but notice how beautiful the restaurant was. She had some important work to do today, and since she gets all her motivation from Kazuma, she asked her manager for some extra time. Like, sure, the cream soda's delicious, but she really just wanted to see her mans in a tuxedo. And with another bite, she couldn't help but mention how happy she was in the moment. And that's really all that Kazuma needed to hear. It seems as if her voice acting work had been going well, and apparently the 3 main voice actors had also been decided. But speaking of which, Amane asked if Rua had stopped by the cafe yet, but Kazuma actually hasn't told anyone about his new job. But still, it all just feels suspicious. Rua had been silent for about 2 weeks now, and it's definitely rare for such a famous person as herself to go on such a long break. Maybe she's actually plotting something, and Amane finds it all strange. Regardless, she warns Kazuma to please be careful, and shortly after noticed how late it had gotten. And as she stood to her feet, she ran over to Kazuma, leaping into his arms, hugging him tightly. And as he called out to her, she mentions being fully recharged and filled with energy, and made her way over towards the exit, thanking him for the meal. And it seems Amane had truly been shining brightly, breaking free of guilt and her old workplace. And it all just reminds her of that day he was able to take himself back. But just like Amane said, if Rua were to try something again, and if anything were to happen, he'd be ready. But hiding somewhere around the back while peeking in, Aya can't help but wonder what's going on. She asked herself what kind of relationship they could have, and that Minato Amane girl from her school, well, she's supposed to be a voice actress. Come to think of it, Aya does remember hearing some rumors that she was close friends with Kazuma, but she just hadn't believed it. But not only that, but they do really look good together, and she's sure Kazuma just doesn't think about her. As she sat there sad and alone on the floor, it seems like Kazuma really is a good guy after all. But now streaming on YouTube, Rua welcomes everyone for joining. Apparently, a close friend of hers told her recently that the most important thing is to try your best. She wanted to think about it seriously, so she reflected on it a lot, and then asked herself what she could possibly do to help the people around her. And that's when she realized she should be using her strength to speak up for others. So she told her grandfather about this great idea of hers, and he decided to lend a hand. And since her grandpa is now on board, starting tomorrow, she'll be going on a 2-week trip with him. But not only that, but she'll also be trying her best to be a good granddaughter, and decided that they should all work really hard together, and says her goodbyes by logging off for the day. It's been exactly a week since Kazuma started his part-time job, and god damn, bro is ripped. And while he's still changing, the door opened behind him, revealing Hiragi, who instantly turned red and began to scream, asking him why he chose to change here in the first place. But there's nothing else bro could do. There's only one changing room after all, but he's pretty much done changing anyway, so he really doesn't mind if she comes in. And it's while the two get settled that she randomly asked if he was okay. And well, it's just that his back is covered in scars. But Kazuma reassures her that sure it was bad before, but it's fine now. But actually, what she really meant to ask was in relation to his muscles, because bro again is jacked. And she straight up started glazing him, complimenting bro since when he wears his uniform, his physique really stands out. And she wants to know all the details, like if he's in a club and his workout routine. Or actually, maybe it's just because he's a guy. And as Kazuma stood there in silence for a moment, he mentioned that it's been a while, but he used to train a bit back in the day, but wanted to ask her if she was into half-naked bodies. And of course she is. She ain't never gonna admit it though, but hey, she exclaims that she's already seen stuff like that plenty of times. Not to mention her so-called boyfriend, who she's seen shirtless all the time. And that's when Kazuma remembered that he's speaking to someone with experience, since Hiragi is a so-called adult who knows about love and stuff after all. And as long as he remembered that, then it would be fine with her. And as he made the final touches to his uniform, he bowed before her, as once again, he'll be counting on her guidance again today. And that's all she needed to hear, as from now on, he should just follow her lead. But she wasn't able to hold her composure for much longer, as shortly after, they shared a laugh together. But now it was game time, and they were fully locked in at work, with Kazuma thanking a few customers for their patronage. It seems like it's nearly the end of rush hour, and everything's going smoothly. Though, Kazuma's a little worried since their manager had caught a cold and had to go home. But regardless, he thought it might be time to go wash up the mountain of dishes that were piling up, when he had suddenly overheard a conversation between Hiragi and a few customers, with one of them mentioning that he'd like to order more food along with her as a side dish. He wants them to go for a ride so he can take her to the beach or something. And it seems this guy might be the typical annoying flirt. But since Hiragi's experienced in love, Kazuma's quite confident she'll be able to deal with it just fine. But Hiragi, on the other hand, is crumbling under the pressure, as she nervously shouts that she doesn't know how to respond. But these guys are having the best time of their life, and this all just leaves Kazuma confused. Why is she even reacting this way? Wondering if maybe it's because they're customers. But as that said customer reached out his hand towards her, he mentioned wanting to take a peek, and placed his hand on the hem of her uniform, since maybe the reason she's wearing such a short skirt was because she wanted to show it off. And as he grazed her thigh with the tip of his fingers, Hiragi shouts begging him to stop. But bro isn't getting it through his head, and neither are his pals in the back, because apparently Kachan's got a crazy temper. Plus he knows karate and warns her not to piss him off. And so while Hiragi trembles in fear, with a cafe filled with people watching, Kachan wanted to show off even more, urging her to look at the bottle he has in his hand. And since he's such a great karate master, he can split one of those bottles clean in half, and wanted to show her how it's done. And while the bottle was yet in mid-air, bro gave it one hell of a chop, sending the bottle flying all the way across the other room towards Kazuma, and he catches it effortlessly in his right hand. And bro's pals must think this is all a game. That bottle really almost hit someone, but Kachan doesn't care. He just wants to try again. And so while directing his attention to Kazuma, he demands that he brings the bottle back over to him. And with eyes as cold as winter, he walks over towards them and places the bottle on the table. And as Hiragi calls out to him, Kachan wonders what he's doing. But bro's locked in, and while straightening his hand, he effortlessly slashed the bottle in half, sending the top half flying like he was shooting from the three-pointer line. The top half then hit the corner of the wall and bounced right into the trash. They had bro out here looking like Steph Curry, and the whole cafe had exploded from the excitement, thinking how amazing and cool Kazuma was. And as Kachan and his crew watched in disbelief, Kachan's blood slowly began to boil, with him deciding to grab onto Kazuma's collar, since there's nothing for him to be proud of. After all, the bottle just shattered, that's all. But Kazuma actually agreed, since that was nothing special at all. But he was finna show him something special in a bit, as he clenched his fist and deadass jammed bro in his throat. Pause. And as Kachan's eyes rolled to the back of his head, he fell straight to the floor, gasping for air. All while Kazuma makes a public service announcement, warning their customers to please refrain from disturbing the cafe. But it looks like he might have overdone it just a little bit. But if Kachan knew how to realign his broken vocal cords, he might be able to recover in a few days. But he reassures him that he'll personally pay for his medical bills from his own salary. And while kneeling down to Kachan's level, he wanted to let him know to never come near Hiragi again, and asked if he made himself clear. And big bro Kachan was spooked. He got up and dipped right out of there, and his crew followed behind him shortly after. And without wasting much time, he turned to ask if Hiragi was alright, while also reminding her that she did her best just now. But not before long, she spun around with tears welling up in her eyes, and planted her face in his chest. And once again, the cafe had an outburst, as they've never seen something so amazing. Apparently, Kachan and his crew had been causing trouble at this restaurant for a while now. And good for Hiragi, since she has such an amazing boyfriend. But she quickly tries to clear up that it's not like, Kazuma's her boyfriend or anything. But to be honest, they already knew, and just wanted to tease her a little. But on the other hand, there seemed to have been a customer that had gotten Kazuma's attention. And as the sun sets on yet another day, Kazuma wanted to ask once more if Hiragi was alright, since their regular customers might have gotten the wrong idea. But about that, Hiragi mentions that she's the one who should be apologizing for having him step in for her earlier. But Kazuma had already made it all the way towards the front door, mentioning that he'll be stepping out for a bit, since the customer who had stepped out just now seemed to have forgotten something. And before Hiragi could even respond, he had already closed the door behind him, leaving her to wonder why it is she's always like this, and why is it that she can never tell the truth about how she feels. And as night falls, Kazuma calls out to the customer that had just left, mentioning that he had forgotten something, and he recognized Kazuma right away as the waiter from earlier who was really nice. But while checking his bag, he knew for a fact he hadn't left anything, and wonders if maybe Kazuma had gotten the wrong person. But Kazuma insists he takes a look regardless. He noticed this chip had been stuck under table 8, and it seems to be a listening device. And as soon as bro saw the chip, he had to lock in, mentioning how that's pretty scary, how there's a bunch of dangerous people out there, so Kazuma should be careful. But Kazuma already has too many on his hands, especially since kicking out the 3 from earlier. And as the man stood before him, tried to make light of the situation, Kazuma mentioned that at that time earlier today, everyone in the cafe was focused on the commotion at table 2, but he was the only one who was looking down. The man claimed he was just scared, since if he had met eyes with Kachan and his crew earlier, there's no telling what those guys would have done to him. But Kazuma thought otherwise, since the man standing before him was very composed. And he noticed when he had picked up the bottle, the man had calmly slipped his hand under the table. And while looking dead in his direction, Kazuma called him a fat rat. And as the man before him caught on, a nasty smile grew on his face. And he immediately dashed towards Kazuma with haste and punched straight in his direction. But Kazuma dashed right on past him, and before he knew it, it was already up for him, as Kazuma stood behind him with his arms wrapped around his neck, ready to play Pop Goes the Weasel, and he didn't expect anything less from the prodigy and the pride of the Takayashiki family. And so it seems like the 10 Arts wasn't just a rumor after all. Back at the cafe, Hiragi can't help but think just how cool Kazuma was today. And it's weird since he doesn't stand out much at school, yet he still manages to get a lot done, all while chasing away those guys from earlier. And she can't help but wonder who he is. Probably Batman at this point, to be honest. But one thing's for sure, and it's that he's always kind to her, and wonders if maybe she should finally tell him the truth, but only when the time feels right. Elsewhere, that very same night, Kazuma's getting down to business. It seems the so-called top 10 members of the Takayashiki family wasn't just a myth after all. And right away, Kazuma picked up that the pig herself must have sent him, asking if him of all people got chosen to eliminate all the girls around him. But this man ain't snitching, since it's a part of the job, and that's all Kazuma needed to hear, as he crushes the listening device in his hand, telling him to beat it, and made it clear that whoever sent him should never come anywhere near him again. But this old geezer doesn't think he could just let him walk away, since if his mission were to fail, he'll probably be erased from the underground world, and by some high schooler no less, which means they had only one option left: to throw hands. Plus, if he beats Kazuma, his reputation will more than likely skyrocket. Hell, he might even get a new job opportunity. Or even better, if he were to hurt the cute maid back at the cafe, he'd more than likely earn Rua's favor. And just look at this man, Kazuma. He's finna kill him! He dashes towards Kazuma, ready to swing his knife, but he effortlessly blocks it, swept his feet, and watched him fall as he landed on his head top. God damn. It's while he placed his knee in this man's throat that he mentions that this time he'll let him go, and warned him to leave the Takayashiki family, just like he did. It's when Kazuma had made it back to the cafe, he took his time to gather all the listening devices, and even he was surprised how many that guy was able to install. Regardless, he drops them all to the floor, crushing them with his feet, and luckily for him, he was able to find them all before Hiragi noticed. And speaking of Hiragi, she called out to him from behind, letting him know that the kitchen was all clean now. She asked if maybe he was done, and even though he wasn't, she couldn't help but notice how sparkling clean the whole place was. But deciding to shoot her shot, she asked if maybe they could have some tea together. It's not long after he had agreed to it that she wanted to ask him a question, since she had always been curious why he started working part-time in the first place. And to him, it was actually pretty simple. He wanted to try his hand at doing things a normal high schooler would do, since up until recently, he only took care of that pig Rua, so he wasn't able to do normal things. And upon hearing that, she wasn't able to hold her composure much longer, as she laughed out loud at the fact that he had called Rua a pig. And now that she thinks about it, only he could go as far as to say that about the granddaughter of the Takayashiki family. But flipping the question back over to her, he wanted to ask why she started doing part-time as well, asking if maybe it were to pay off a debt, even though it doesn't really seem like she has problems with money. It's as she took a moment to think about it that she confesses that all the name brand purses and stuff, they were all fake, confessing that she probably got it off Temu or Etsy or something, that even a middle school allowance could buy all the things she had been flaunting. You see, the truth is, she's deadass broke as hell, and since her dad is no longer around, her family situation has gotten pretty bad, to the point she had to start working part-time just to help out with the living expenses. And even though she tends to show off, she found it hard to bring herself to say it, that she was just a normal girl. All that talk about having a boyfriend in university was a lie. Not to mention all the times she talked about being experienced was also a lie as well. Everything was just a lie. It made Kazuma ask her why she was telling him all of this, and it seems she doesn't even know why herself. but knows she wants him to listen to how she really feels. Since when she lies to him, it hurts her a lot. But also, she wanted to apologize for back then, when she had went to karaoke at that time. Kazuma can confess that she was the only one there who wasn't laughing, and figured she might have had a reason why. And it's all because she saw herself in him. Before, she used to call him Rua's shadow, but the real servant was her, sucking up to Rua this whole time, just so that she'd be able to be among the upper class. So back then when he tried to dress up and fit in with everyone, she couldn't bring herself to laugh at him because he was just like her. She then apologized for always being cold towards him, as what he sees before him is who she really is, and she hates it. It's in that moment that Kazuma finally understood what she was saying. But still, the things he had seen about her really made him respect her more. And it had caught her off guard for a while, as she asked him what he was even talking about, wondering if he had missed everything she had just said about her fake boyfriend. That really, all she was doing was trying to keep up with Rua's level of wealth. But that's not it. Kazuma doesn't care about the recommendation, her boyfriend, or brand names. He just respects her for being the maid who seriously gives it her all. But she swears that anyone could have done it. But he insists that it's not just anyone, since to him, Hiragi is the cutest and most honest maid he knows. But calling out to him, she thought that maybe he shouldn't compliment girls like that so easily, since, you know, his girlfriend might just get mad. And bro really said who? And of course she's referring to Amane, since aren't the two of them dating? But Kazuma mentions that they're not. And once she had heard that, her eyes had widened in disbelief. But you know, it really does look like Amane's head over heels for him. And if he's got a pretty and popular girl as his girlfriend, he should be happy. So why not just date her? It's as he took a moment that he mentions how he really thought about things like that. And he wouldn't want to just like a girl just so that he could show her off to other people. And his response had completely shocked her, that she had started blushing instantly, mentioning that he had said something cool again. Why you glazing my guy, man? Stop! And so it was established that they actually weren't dating, which meant that this might actually be the perfect time to shoot her shot, asking if maybe, you know, someone like her. But the door behind him had suddenly swung open, as Rua calls out to her dear Kazuma while extending a greeting to the little stray kitten Hiragi, and it seems she had brought company with her. It's when they both turned and noticed her that Rua mentioned losing contact with the old geezer servant of hers, as well as how the signals from the listening devices had gone silent. Well, you know, as to be expected of her Kazuma, asking if he finally understood it now, that she is absolutely trying her best just for Kazuma's sake. Meanwhile, Kazuma still don't know what the hell she's even talking about, leading Rua to draw their attention to the brand new toy she had borrowed, Hinokami Rei. She is the brand new assassin of the Takayashiki family. Sure, she might be small, but she's also really dangerous. And with just one glance, Kazuma could tell she was pretty skilled. Sure, Rua might not have needed to get a top 10 member just to get rid of Hiragi, but she'll willingly do anything just to wipe out every obstacle to her love. And if that's the case, she doesn't mind becoming a demon. But little did she know, she was awakening the devil himself. But now she wanted to ask the worthless little nobody in front of her what she was doing with her Kazuma. Straight up had Hiragi spooked. Hiragi asked how she had even found this place. And well, let's just say Rua knew she worked there for the longest time. And since they're both classmates, of course everything about her would have been investigated, including all the fake stuff and that imaginary boyfriend of hers. She knew all about it. And to be honest, watching her play pretend was entertaining for a while. But now, she absolutely can't ignore some nobody trying to flirt with her Kazuma. So this means war. But not only that, she'll be canceling all her scholarships. And while she's at it, she could get her expelled as well. all this because she decided to take Kazuma for herself. And to think when they had went out for karaoke, she had looked at him with such cold eyes. So why was it that she was now fixated on him, straight up calling her a two-faced snake to her face? But Kazuma had enough, telling her to quit it, since it's all her fault. And he's not blaming Hiragi at all. But Rua snaps back, since this doesn't concern him, but rather this was a matter between women. And as Rei steps forward ready to fight, both her and Kazuma's eyes had met. But Rua hadn't stopped there, since the lies Hiragi tells them are so pathetic. And now that she thinks about it, didn't Hiragi tell her yesterday how after her classy date with her boyfriend, he had drove her home and kissed her goodbye? But that whole story almost had Rua bursting out laughing. And how it was so cringe. She's such a sly fox. And actually, now that she thinks about it, she wonders when she should tell everyone about this, slowly pushing Kazuma further towards the edge. And as he grabs onto Hiragi, he helps her up and pulled her in close, kissing her on the lips. And it damn near gave Rua a stroke. But now, she has an experienced kiss. So I guess it's not a lie anymore.
With that, the kiss was no longer a lie. And once the truth settled in, Rua prepared her killing machine Rei, instructing her to kill the girl standing across from her. And Rei was on that timing, responding that she understood, and dashed directly towards both Kazuma and Hiragi. But without wasting much time, he shoved Hiragi aside and shifted his stance, preparing to swing his leg towards her, landing a backward kick to her stomach, which she barely managed to block, and it had sent her flying all the way across the room until she finally landed on her feet and was once more face to face with Kazuma. Yet all this action had left Hiragi confused as to what the hell was going on. But Kazuma wasn't about to play around any longer, taunting her to come at him, eager to show her what a real elite could do. But shouting her name from a distance, Rua once again instructed her not to waste any more time on Kazuma, but instead to just target the girl. And as Rei took a moment to compose herself, she knelt down as she adjusted her boot and yet again dashed towards Hiragi. But this time, she chose to leap straight over Kazuma as a hidden blade appeared from under the sole of her boot, descending directly towards Hiragi. But acting swiftly yet again, Kazuma grabbed onto her leg, forcing her head to tilt towards the ground. And what do you know? It had actually been a concealed weapon. So with one hand grabbing her leg, he used the other to quickly slice the blade in half. Strangely enough, it brought a smile to Rei's face, and a faint blush crept across her cheeks, leaving Kazuma confused as to why she would even laugh in a situation like this. But shortly after, he decided to let go of her leg, mentioning that he understood it now. She had probably been itching this whole time to fight, since it had been the only freedom allowed to a machine such as herself. And sensing there was more to her, he called her name and asked why she hadn't chosen to sever her ties with the Takayashiki family. Rei was a bit confused at first, but she only needed to think about the possibility, as it is an option. She could be free. And who knows, maybe she could get a part-time job just like he did. Actually, now that he thinks about it, even the maid outfit there might just suit her surprisingly well. And not before long, her eyes began to light up as she suddenly began to stare at Hiragi, which only left her wondering who Kazuma truly was. When suddenly calling out to them, Rua had been losing her patience, demanding that they stopped getting all chummy and friendly with each other, as she has no plans to allow anyone to cut ties with her, and once again shouted that Rei should hurry up and kill Hiragi already. But when she hadn't responded, Rua began to lose her mind, wondering if she had really been defying her orders. But then, like a machine that had been factory reset, Rei slipped back into her combat stance, and it seems it just can't be helped at this point. After all,
It did take Kazuma a long time to break free, so it seems like fighting is the only other option. But suddenly, the cafe's door had swung open as Rua's cousin Kikuta from chapter 1 came in declaring that was enough, surprising even Kazuma himself, as he never expected his master to be there. But she only smiled his way, as it truly had been a long time since they've met, and immediately began apologizing as their princess seemed to have been causing trouble yet again. But Rua just doesn't see it that way, since Hiragi is the one at fault here. But even if that were true, demanding for that person to be killed might have been a bit too far. There are clearly too many problems with how Rua chose to handle the situation, as using both the Takayashiki family's resources along with Rei to do her bidding had gone a bit far, especially when her purpose for doing so was for protection. And at this rate, if her grandfather were to ever find out that those resources were used to kill a friend, she asked what she thought would happen. But Rua genuinely doesn't have an answer, as she scrambles to find something to say. But you know what? Kikuta's willing to sweep this under the rug, as long as Rua apologizes to her friend and go home. But Rua, of course, chose to be stubborn, as she genuinely has no idea why she has to be the one to apologize. But as Kikuta's hands tighten on her shoulder, she finally decided to cave in, and shortly after approached Hiragi, mentioning that maybe saying the word kill was a bit over the line, and that she was sorry. It even caught Kazuma off guard, as this was the first time he had ever seen her apologize. And who knows, maybe she had finally done a little reflecting. But taking a moment to call out to Rua, Hiragi also wanted to apologize, since she too had been lying this whole time, and she was actually really sorry. But that apology only made Rua's ears twitch, causing her to suddenly spring forward, declaring that she was the one at fault and that getting close to Kazuma was absolutely unforgivable. And you know what? I guess she hasn't changed at all, leaving Kazuma to take back everything he had said earlier. But not long after, they made their decision to leave. But before they did, Kikuta wanted to ask him a final question, since she had been wondering if Kazuma had any plans to return to the Takayashiki family. And the question had caught him off guard, but he soon after made it clear that he didn't, and apologized for not saying goodbye to his dear master before he did. And even though she understood where he was coming from, she wanted to let him know that Rua's grandfather doesn't have plans to give up on him just yet, as he's determined to make him Rua's husband. And since he's the most powerful man in Tokyo, it's going to be tough going forward. But Kazuma honestly doesn't mind, as he had considered all that before severing his ties. But his goal is still to live as normal of a life as he possibly can. And it had brought a smile to Kikuta's face, as she couldn't help but laugh. She had no idea that had been his goal. But to be honest, she somehow always knew that it would come to this, since he never seemed like someone who could be owned. And with that, it was time for them to really take their leave. But next time, she'd like to stop by as a customer. And if that's the case, Kazuma doesn't mind giving her special treatment. Though, in her opinion, the next time they meet, they might just be enemies. But if that's the case, then Kazuma promises to go easy on her. And so they finally head towards the door, closing it behind them. And with that, the cafe had returned to its former sense of peace. And while approaching Hiragi, Kazuma waved his hand before her face, noticing she had been completely spaced out, but decided to move in a bit closer, wanting to be sure she was alright. And it turns out she was completely fine, though she can't seem to wrap her head around what the hell just happened. It suddenly felt like she was in a video game, and she wasn't even sure she was about to die. But that only causes Kazuma to apologize for dragging her into this mess. But really, she thinks it's her who made Rua angry for lying and kissing her mans. But just thinking about the kiss had turned her completely red, causing her to spring up from off the floor in a panic, as she thanks him for protecting her. But now that she thinks about it, she can only wonder why it is that he's so nice to her. Honestly, she doesn't quite think she deserves to be friends with him. And as Kazuma gently looked back at her, he asked if they needed some special qualifications to be friends. And since he never had friends before, he doesn't actually know what's normal. But what he does know is that he respects her and wonders if that isn't enough of a reason to be friends. But the whole thing still doesn't sit with Hiragi. Instead, she requested that she at least do something to make it up to him. And if that's the case, he had a favor he wanted to ask. And well, it was simply that he wanted someone to go shopping with him for clothes. You see, back at karaoke, he tried his best to dress up, but was only laughed at. So it really screwed up what he knows to be normal. So he wanted to know if she could help him look a bit more normal and stylish, which caused her eyes to light up immediately, as she rushed in to hug him right away, letting him know that he should leave it all to her. But not only that, but they should go to the mall together, as she'll make him look the coolest in the world. Yet all he really wants is to look normal. And since they had been steadily growing closer, she looked up towards him and requested that going forward, he could call her Ayacha. But not only that, she'd like to call him Kazuma as well. But he actually didn't have a problem at all, as he shortly after followed up by calling her Ayacha. And since she had made it this far, she figured she should also ask him about the kiss earlier, which prompted Kazuma to apologize, as he never meant to do it without asking. But that wasn't the issue at all, but rather, it was just their first time, and she'd like to do it again, but in a more romantic way. And bro really said got it, leaning in as he kissed her yet again. And once they were done, Ayacha hadn't had enough yet, as she asked him to do it again, before wrapping her arms around him, which led to her gazing into his eyes. And with that, she wanted to thank him. The very next day at school, Hiragi's classmates are shocked that she's changing classes and asked her why. And well, apparently a lot had happened, all while Rua also chimes in that yeah, a lot did happen. But not only that, she'd have to retake the special students' exams. And unfortunately, if she fails, she'll get demoted to a regular student, mocking her since with that failure, she'll have to start paying her own tuition. But Hiragi seems to already know that. But with the utmost confidence, she declares that she'll clear the test pretty easily, taking Rua by surprise and leaving everyone else around them to wonder why it felt like they were at each other's throats. When just then, Hiragi noticed a student walking in their class and swiftly called out to the young lady, Honda. As Hiragi made her way over towards her, she only wanted to mention that today was her last day in class, and how there was something she really wanted to get off her chest, all while Kazuma stood behind their classroom door, listening in. And well, about before, when Hiragi took her seat without asking, she wanted to sincerely apologize for the trouble that she had caused. And it's then that Honda had remembered the time she was referring to, and quickly mentioned that it was fine, and that it was nothing for her to worry about. And as Hiragi took the moment to thank her, she mentions how before, she had been really full of herself, mostly because she was a special student, even though something like that didn't matter at all, especially since there are some pretty amazing people out there who don't have any status or title. And the same could be said about the opposite too. And she's only now finally realizing it. But Rua had heard enough of her crap, because what's with all this good girl act all of a sudden? Especially after she had been lying to everyone this whole time. As Hiragi turned back to look at her, Rua had gotten the whole class's attention, as everyone curiously wonders what Rua could possibly mean by she had been lying. And if they wanted to know that badly, she teasingly asked if she should spill her little secret to everyone. But stepping right into class, our boy Kazuma warns her that that was enough, and followed up by asking if she had forgotten what Sakura had told her, since laying hands on Hiragi is forbidden. And as soon as she saw the man himself, Rua's whole attitude had changed, mentioning how she wasn't actually using her hands, but she was using her mouth instead. Besides, she's actually telling the truth. But interrupting that very thought, Hiragi had called out to Kazuma. She appreciates him standing up for her, but she wanted to let him know that it was okay now. And she looks forward to saying it properly with her own words. So as she turned back to face her former classmates, she called out to them, mentioning how this whole time she's only been pretending, trying to keep up an appearance that was only a lie. You see, the truth is, her family is really poor, and she works a ton of part-time jobs. Not to mention, she doesn't actually have a college boyfriend. So this whole time, she had just been lying to them, and she was really sorry about it. She was only scared of Rua's popularity, her status, and the power that she held. So she kept watching her mood, desperate to stay in her good graces, thinking that she had to follow her. But now she was done. So from now on, she's going to treat Rua like a normal person. Though she must admit, after giving it a lot of thought, Rua definitely gets spoiled way too much. And that's probably why she's so arrogant. And that alone was grounds for Rua to start crashing out. She wonders who the hell Hiragi thinks she's talking to. But she wasn't done yet, since above all, Rua needs a friend that she can actually be honest with, just like Hiragi. And it had shook Rua to her very core, that her eyes widened, leaving Kazuma himself in disbelief, as Hiragi really is amazing. To think that even after what Rua did to her, she's still trying to be friends with her again. How she really is earnest to the very end, a truly kind girl. But that wasn't all Hiragi wanted to mention, as she doesn't have any intentions of giving up on Kazuma either, leaving both Rua and Kazuma confused. Sure, they might be friends, but they're also rivals. And as she grabbed onto Kazuma's arm, pulling him closer, she wanted to let him know that he should brace himself too. And she kissed him on the cheek, declaring that she doesn't have any intentions of losing to Rua or Amane. And in that very same breath, the class erupted with excitement, as everyone wonders who the hell Kazuma really is. First Amane, and now he has Hiragi too. The only person who isn't amused is Rua, as she genuinely thinks she's going to kill her. But that very same night, Sakura wanted to mention again that killing was not allowed. Sure, she decided to keep quiet due to last chapter's incident, but if there truly is a next time, she'll have no other choice but to report it. She is not allowed to use Rei anymore either. And as Rua struggles to get her words out, she suddenly bursts from the frustration. Because if she's not by Kazuma's side, weird girls will only come and swarm him. Not to mention he got kissed on the cheek today. To be honest, if that's the case, then why don't she just kiss him too? But just the thought of making the first move, it's unheard of in her opinion. Though if Kazuma did mention that he couldn't help it and he really wanted to kiss her, then maybe she'd consider it. And if that's the case, Sakura thinks that she should change her approach. Instead of constantly pushing other people down, she should try doing things Kazuma would actually like. And then maybe he won't even look at anyone else. And as Rua froze for a moment, she couldn't help but think about the things he liked. And as Sakura called out to her once more, due to the deafening silence, Rua suddenly shouted that that was it. She finally gets it now, and not before long, cheerfully made her way out the room as she mentions going to talk to her grandpa, leaving Sakura to wonder if she's going to be okay. Entering into the student council's room, a young beauty wishes everyone a good morning, and standing to their feet, their members wishes their president Kocho a good morning as well. It's as she sat by her desk, she shortly after calls out to Hayashi, asking her a question regarding the budget proposal. You see, somehow the broadcasting club had also recorded the equipment expenses twice, and requested of her to please ask them to resubmit it. But that wasn't the only problem that they had, since they had missed the deadline for the public relation magazine. but once again, Kocho handled it with class. And before they knew it, another member had requested that he go make them some tea. But before that, she wanted to request that he deliver a document to the vice principal. And of course, as expected, the student council's president, Suzuka Kocho's work is flawless as always. Standing outside her office are all the members of her fan club, because apparently she not only manages the student council, but she also runs her own company as well. Plus, she's always ranked first ever since the entrance exam. Not to mention she's a real beauty, truly the perfect fusion of brain and looks. But what they really wanted to know is if she had a boyfriend. But there's absolutely no way there'd be a guy who's good enough for her. And she's known for waiting until marriage. And to be honest, with a face like that and a chest as big as hers, she has an unfair advantage. And if they're keeping it a buck, they'd definitely choose her over Rua any day. But speaking of the little devil, she called out to them from behind. One glance was all it took to nearly rip their souls from their bodies. But simply put, Rua needed them to move since they were blocking the way. She has business in the student council room, and as they frantically apologized and leaped out her way, she made her entry into the office as she asked if the student council president was there. But upon first glance, Kocho can't help but think how unusual it was to see Rua, as she mentions that it's really been a while. But getting straight to business, she mentions how she just created a new school rule, along with the fact that she had received approval from the foundation's chairman. And so all that was needed was for her to handle the administrative procedure. But one look at this document was all it took for Kocho to doubt her own eyes. Not only that, but the announcement to the students would be done at tomorrow's assembly, and closes the door behind her, leaving Kocho with no choice but to sigh as a sudden ache bloomed in her head. The very next morning at the assembly, President Takayashiki mentions that this world is very cruel, thus power commands respect, while powerlessness invites none. It's simply just the law of the jungle, as the strong are the ones who win. And so it's not in his will that any of them would be losers, but his mission instead is to shape them into winners for Japan's future. And so starting today, he wishes to ignite their motivation, as he will be announcing a new system at the academy. In this system will be known as the badge system, where scholarship students at the very top of the academy will now be wearing a gold badge, and the other general students will only be wearing a silver one. This news had brought a genuine shock to Kazuma's face, while on the other hand, the other students seemed genuinely curious, and so inviting a member of the student council onto the stage, he thought it would be best for them to explain further, introducing Rua Takayashiki. And so just as the foundation chairman said earlier, starting now, the scholarship students will be wearing a very special gold badge, and while on school grounds, they're obligated to wear this said badge. It's with this new system, her goal is for them to truly understand the pride and responsibility of being a scholarship student, believing that it will push them even further towards working harder. And for the general student, it should be a reminder that they should strive for excellence. So whether it's academic or extracurricular activities, she hopes for them all to do their best. And it's in that moment that each and every student had felt fired up, while Kazuma on the other hand knew for a fact that this new system was dangerous. But lastly, the student council had one last request for all of them, and it's that all the scholarship students who wear the gold badge would be now considered valuable assets. So each and every student is expected to show them their respect, and that would be all. So while she made her way off stage and walked right past Kazuma, she couldn't resist the urge to wink at him. Meanwhile, these bozos' hearts are beating out of their chest, all while Kazuma's sick and tired of this woman. But now fights are breaking out since these guys could have sworn Rua just winked at them. All while Kazuma for some reason has a really bad feeling about this and decided to head towards the school infirmary. You see, usually announcements like that are handled by the student council's president. He doesn't think that there's any way someone as sharp as her would genuinely support a system like that. But upon sliding the door open, his eyes widened as Kocho now stood before him topless. Isn't this like the second time this is happening? And upon noticing that it was the president, he quickly turned away apologizing, mentioning that he'll step outside right away. But she stopped him, requesting that he now comes in, and closes the door behind him, and kindly asks that he face the other way. Kazuma, of course, reluctantly agrees, but she had something she wanted to confirm first, asking if by any chance he was Suzuki Kazuma from Class 1-1, catching even him off guard, as he shortly after asked how she knew that. And well, according to her, she has memorized every class and every student's name in this school, but the academy has over 1,000 students. So the fact that she is able to do this really makes her the perfect student council president. Once she was all done, she requested that he turns around, and without wasting any time, Kazuma went right ahead and apologized yet again. But the president genuinely thinks that he is not the one at fault here, since she had been the one who started changing her clothes without locking the door. But actually, now that she thinks about it, an apology just won't do, and she simply cannot allow him to leave, as being seen in only her underwear by a man before marriage could be considered the greatest failure of her life. So going forward, she'd need Kazuma to choose. Either he gets expelled from this school or gets engaged to her. And needless to say, he had no idea what the hell was going on, as he wondered to himself what President Kocho could even be talking about. But you see, if he were to be expelled from school right now, that would be serious trouble. And so if that's the case, it seems it would be an engagement after all. And so going forward, she kindly requested that Kazuma please take care of her starting now. Once again, bro has no idea what the hell's going on, and the only possible conclusion is that the president's low-key a comedian, but it's kinda hard to tell, especially with such a serious expression. Changing the topic, President Kocho wanted to know why he had come to the infirmary in the first place, asking if by any chance he wasn't feeling well. It was in that moment that Kazuma remembered. He actually wanted to ask her something, and as he turned around to face her, she could only wonder what it could be. But you see, it's about the badge system that was announced just now. He wanted to know what she thought about it, and as her eyes widened in shock, she continues that it was actually a proposal from the student council member Rua Takayashiki, and she simply just approved it. But that's not at all what Kazuma meant. What he wants to know is whether she agreed with it or not. As she stumbles over her words, Kazuma's gaze sharpened. But you see, in Kazuma's opinion, he thinks that the rule doesn't sit right with her at all, since such a policy as that could only create resentment among the students. And now that he thinks about it, the student council president suddenly feeling sick and staying in the infirmary would be an awfully convenient excuse as to why she wasn't at the assembly. And as Kocho fixed her gaze upon Kazuma, she would then call out to him, since it turns out that he's actually quite a frightening person, and kindly asked that their conversation ends there. And since he's not feeling well, she'll go and call the school's nurse for him. And it was in that moment that Kazuma knew that with such a reaction, it must have been true that the president opposes the system as well. She might not be showing it, but she knows she can't win against Rua. So in short, this is a one-sided decision by that pig. And it really leaves him now to wonder, what the hell could she possibly be planning? Yet another day at Teikai Academy, and Rua excitingly mentions that Kazuma was finally back, asking what he thought about her super cool presentation. And well, if he's keeping it a bean with her, that whole badge system is low-key ass, and it should probably be scrapped immediately. And believe it or not, Rua had already seen this coming, and now she's one step closer to finding out why he keeps pushing her away. And it's obvious because he wanted to shine just like her, whatever the hell that means. But that's more than likely why he got so sick and tired of hiding in her shadow. It's all because he wanted to become someone special like her, and thought that if he stayed by her side, her brilliance would only bury his own, before turning towards him to ask if she had gotten it correct. But Once again, Bro is as lost as a thought mid-sentence. Yet Rua continues by apologizing, as she couldn't believe it took her this long to notice, even though they were childhood friends. And so she talked it over with both his master and her grandpa, and that's why she created the new badge system. And while digging further into her pocket, she pulled out his very own gold badge, as now he too can join the upper ranks. But he had only looked down at her with complete disgust, as he knocked the badge right out of her hand, having it fall right to the ground. And Rua's eyes had grown wide, as the class had suddenly went silent, and without a second thought, she asked him what the hell was going on, but fails yet again to truly understand him, as what he yearns for is nothing more than a normal life. So a badge that allows him to join the upper ranks is completely worthless, as he simply doesn't want that crap. Once more his words left her shaken, but she had yet to understand what he meant. To think she had went through all this trouble for nothing, and wanted to make sure that he knew that she wasn't going to give him a gold badge nor a silver one, but rather he'll be the only one in the whole school who had none at all. And as Kazuma let out a deep sigh, he mentioned that that was fine with him, and that she could do whatever she wanted. So as she turned to face him, both infuriated and embarrassed, she called him an idiot, as he truly is impossible to read. But not only that, she doesn't want him come crying to her when he regrets it later. So exactly 2 weeks later in the underground library, Amane mentions how lately the school had felt a bit strange, and that had honestly caught Kazuma by surprise, as he never thought she'd notice. But in her opinion, ever since certain students began wearing their gold badges, students began giving up their seats to their superior, and teachers have also been overlooking certain bad behaviors in students. And it all feels like the favoritism towards scholarship students has gotten out of control. But Kazuma couldn't agree more, as it's exactly what he was afraid of this whole time, asking if by any chance he has ever heard of the prison experiment. Apparently it was a psychology experiment conducted at a university overseas, where they would split up about 20 people into guards and prisoners, having them live in a fake prison. You see, as time went by, the guards had gotten more and more full of themselves, while the prisoners on the other hand got more and more submissive. And not before long, the guards began punishing prisoners and got violent. It had gotten so dangerous, in fact, that the experiment had to be stopped. But the guards reportedly wanted to continue, being addicted to the thrill of having power, which has Amane wondering if the school could end up in a similar position. And though it's not unlikely, Kazuma doesn't think it'll go that far. But it does feel rather familiar. Scholarship students and regular students, those who rule and those who are ruled. Sure, it had always existed, but the badge system made it even worse. And believe it or not, there was actually more to the experiment, as years later, it turns out that the professor running the experiment had been the one instructing the guards to act harshly. So in other words, without pressure from above, things usually wouldn't get that bad. And as Amane mentions how much of a relief that was, Kazuma knew that if the higher-ups were to tell them to, the guards, or the students in this case, could turn out the same way. Though he thought to leave the story there, as he wouldn't want to scare Amane even more. But come to think of it, there's something he's been wondering about. And well, it's that Amane hadn't been wearing a badge either, and asked if maybe it was because he was the only one without one. And if that's the case, she really didn't need to worry about him. But that actually hadn't been the case at all, as apparently there was some kind of mix-up with the vendor, and she wasn't able to get hers either. But right away Kazuma knew that it was definitely that pig's Rua's way of getting back at Kazuma for refusing her badge, and apologizes to Amane, as it's more than likely all his fault. Standing to his feet, as he'll be going to speak with that pig himself. But in an attempt to stop him, Amane mentions that it was fine, since even if she had gotten one, she wouldn't have worn it anyway, which yet again had caught him by surprise, as he asked why. And well, because if she did, then she wouldn't have been able to match with him. You see, she doesn't really care about the badges, since she had always been alone anyway. But more than that, what matters to her most is the time she gets to spend with Kazuma. and how that meant way more to her. And while reaching forth her arm, she wrapped it around his neck, as he had been the one to save her from the darkness. So right now, she's really happy. And as she pulled him in closer, their lips had only been an inch apart before she was absolutely holed by a notification going off on her phone, leaving Kazuma to wonder if maybe it had been from work. But as she took a moment to check, it had actually been from someone in the baseball club. You see, he had actually forced her to give her contact information. Someone by the name of Asai, or actually maybe it's Asanuma, mentioning that he wanted to speak with her after school, and she can only wonder what it could be about. And well, if it's the baseball club along with that icon, Kazuma's pretty confident it must be Asano, and wonders if maybe he was about to confess. But calling out to Kazuma, Amane asked if maybe when she was done talking with Asano, if Kazuma would maybe walk her home, since it's actually been a while, plus she's off from work for the day. And since he had also been off from his part-time job, he didn't mind one bit, leaving her to cheerfully add that she'd like them to meet up at 4 p.m. But when it had already been 10 minutes past 4, he couldn't help but feel like it was unusual for Amane to be late. Though, to be honest, 10 minutes isn't all that crazy. But she had always been the one to mention how being late affected your credibility at work. So no matter what, she'd always make it on time. And in fact, she's never once been late to meet with him. Till maybe the confession was just being dragged out. But just in case, he thought he should at least prepare for the worst, and immediately after sent an email. Meanwhile, at Teikai Academy, inside the hollow halls, Amane asked them to stop, since she wanted to go home now. But they insist she stays, as they weren't even done talking yet. Plus, this isn't even a bad idea for her either. So they wanted her to quit being stubborn and just do what she was told. And as she whimpered under her breath no, she quietly called out to Kazuma, asking him to save her. Meanwhile, in the school's infirmary, Kocho makes sure to lock the door and closes the curtains too, as she needs to make sure not to make such a blunder again. When just then, she received a notification on her laptop, and it had actually been addressed to the student council. But when she had taken a look, it had genuinely surprised her, as she wondered to herself exactly what it was Suzuki Kazuma could be trying to do. As Amane shrunk under the relentless harassment, she could only plead for Kazuma to help. So when the door suddenly swung open, everyone inside froze as Kazuma warned them to take their filthy hands off her. The room falls into silence, but shattering it moments later was Amane calling out for Kazuma. And that honestly just pissed Asano off even more, since someone without a badge should know their place and head home. But Kazuma's eyes would only sharpen, and while turning his attention to Asano, he calmly asked what had happened to his club activities. Like, was it really a good idea for a scholarship student to skip practice just to hit on girls? And at this rate, if his baseball team were to find out about this, he'd more than likely lose his precious gold badge. But more importantly, who would have thought that it took this many guys to hit on one girl? Although it's not all too surprising that a coward would go that far. And it seems he might have struck a nerve, because in a fit of rage, Asano shoved Amane to the side as he asked if Kazuma wanted to box. But before she could hit the ground, Kazuma caught her in his arms, while adding that it's a good thing Asano is easy to provoke, because now he had exactly what he came for, and shortly after asked if Amane was okay. Now, if you thought Asano was pissed off before, then well, now he was absolutely boiling. Kazuma was in his way when he was just about to offer Amane a sweet deal, one that even caught Kazuma's attention. If Amane would go out with him, he could guarantee her a gold badge. After all, staying a no badger would only make life harder for her, especially since he had heard that Kazuma was the reason she didn't have one in the first place. And even if that were true, trying to force his way on her when she was clearly uncomfortable is just creepy. Besides, his bum ass doesn't have the authority to be giving out badges anyway. And it seems Kazuma wasn't wrong, judging from Asano's reaction, which could only mean that the pig herself had put him up to the job, piecing it together that he was ordered to hit on Amane and separate her from Kazuma. And you would have thought that they were shocked because he was right, but rather, ain't no way he just called Rua a pig. Like, they were getting ready to gang up on him right then and there. And damn, Kazuma didn't know it was such a touchy subject. Like, if they want, he doesn't mind calling her the boss pig if that makes them feel better. But finally having enough, Fatso told him he better watch his mouth. He's been listening to Kazuma yap this whole time, and he's been getting sick of his cocky attitude. But Kazuma asked him if he was sure about this. After all, he's a judo scholarship student, and if he were to cause a violent incident, then his whole club could be suspended. But this man decided that he just didn't care. After all, there was an incident just last year that the school had completely covered up for him. It might not have been known, but the baseball and judo clubs are both powerhouses. And let's just say that the school's really cooperative about this kind of stuff. Plus, he's also factoring in that these guys don't have badges, so there's no way that this could turn into a big deal. So as he charged towards Kazuma, he had full intentions of having him regret ever defying them. And as Amane closed her eyes, she was once again lifted off her feet as Kazuma apologized and asked her to wait for a second before swiftly dodging his punch and throwing him completely off guard. But that wasn't all he had in him, as he urges Kazuma not to run away like some loser and tries again to get a hold of him. And while Kazuma yet again dodges, he apologizes to Amane as he's really just trying to buy them some time. But all this bobbing and weaving wasn't going to stop them all from jumping him. But really, he just needed a little bit more time until she could get here. And it was in that exact moment that she called out to them, none other than President Kocho. You see, if they were going to be fighting in a place like this, then they better have a pretty damn good reason for it. And as they all struggled to come up with an excuse, Kazuma let her know right then and there that it was nothing. Just a whole bunch of guys who had gotten rejected by a girl and allowed their tempers to get the best of them, while he, on the other hand, calmly tried to talk them down. And as her eyes darted towards each person in the room, she honestly couldn't believe that they were fighting over something as trivial as that. Like, both the baseball and judo clubs have very important matches coming up, so they shouldn't be wasting their time, but instead should return to practice. And as expected, they're weak against authority. The ones who grow arrogant and ugly through power are normally the ones who become strangely obedient when faced with even greater power. So as Kazuma began to thank the president for coming to their rescue, she, on the other hand, wasn't done just yet. And as she approached him, she wanted to know if the email she had received not too long ago was actually from him. It read that a black butterfly had wandered into an empty classroom in the first year building. And upon reading his message, the first thing that came to her mind was the pattern of her bra that only he had the opportunity to see, causing him to swiftly apologize, as he thought it was the best way to have her handle the situation. And as Kocho mentions that she understood, she whispers that she thought he was calling her into the empty classroom to do something improper to her. But bro genuinely hadn't heard a word that she said and asked her what was wrong. But directing her attention back towards them, Kocho wanted to know why they were so close to each other in the first place. Like, all this closeness is a bit too much on campus. But apologizing once more, he explained that she had a rather frightening experience and he thinks she might still be a bit shaken about it, which of course is understandable and can't be helped. But calling out to President Kocho, Kazuma thinks that the thing that's causing the scholarship students to grow arrogant is none other than the badge system itself, imploring her and the student council to improve upon it right away, immediately causing Kocho to avert her gaze, and not before long, she spun around and mentioned that it was time to leave the campus, instructing them both to go home. It's as she closed the door behind her, Kazuma thought he'd let Amane know that she could let go now. But when she gripped his arm even tighter, it had caused his eyes to widen, before shortly after apologizing for allowing her to go through something so traumatic, all because of him. But that wasn't it at all, since being a badgeless student was something she chose for herself. But rather, being surrounded by men and them getting so close was really terrifying to her. So she pleaded with him to please override all those negative experiences with himself. And as he looked down towards her, she wanted nothing more than to have her head be filled with nothing but Kazuma, as she pulled him in closer and embraced him with a kiss. Now, you would think that when she pulled away that she had finally had enough, but little mama went in for a second and even a third. God damn! It's when she finally was done that she thanked him, as it seems that the overriding was now complete, adding that she'll never forget this kiss for as long as she lives. The very next day, while on his way to school, Kazuma couldn't help but notice someone standing afar off in the school's yard, and upon walking a bit closer, he wanted to wish President Kocho a good morning. But she, on the other hand, had been completely taken by surprise, as she warned him not to sneak up on her without making a sound. But skipping right past it, he had been curious what she had been doing there this early in the morning. While she hid something behind her back, she simply mentioned that it was nothing important. But directing his question back to him, she wanted to know why he was there so early as well. Simply put, there was this book he wanted to read, so he decided to come by a little earlier than usual. Yet that didn't seem to make much sense, since the library wouldn't be open for at least a couple more hours, which could only mean that he would be going to the underground archive. And that had genuinely caught him off guard, as he had no idea the president knew about that place as well. But of course she would, since she knows practically everything about this academy. It's as she clenched a paper bag right behind her back, Kazuma thought to ask if by any chance she was cleaning the field. You know, since there's dirt on her knees and he can hear the sound of stones behind her. Still, he's not quite sure why she'd be doing this, since this would be the kind of thing a contractor would handle, but since the contractor has been tied up with the other fields, they almost never come to this one. Still, it doesn't make any sense why Teikai Academy would be cutting corners on their budget, but they're probably doing it on purpose to further widen the gap between clubs with and without badges. And that's when it all started to make sense, as it sounds exactly like something that damn pig's family would do. But even so, that doesn't mean that Kocho has to do it herself. But in her opinion, someone has to take care of these small details. You see, a few days ago, a track student had stepped on a really sharp stone and had gotten injured. Even if they don't have badges themselves, they're still working hard. But when she noticed she was getting real passionate, her eyes widened and she quickly spun around as she mentioned that he should just go already, since if he doesn't, then he'll be losing his precious reading time. But not only that, she was wondering if maybe what they had spoken about could be kept just between them. And as Kazuma took a moment to think about it, he suddenly rolled up his sleeve as he mentioned that he understood, before dropping his bag to the floor and kneeling down to help her pick up stones, leaving her absolutely starstruck. And the idea is that if the two of them were to do it, then they'd surely go by a lot faster. But in typical tsundere fashion, she mentions that he was only being a fool. After all, it's not like anyone's going to praise him for helping. But in his opinion, that's totally fine, as he's sure that the academy could have two more fools such as themselves. And you know what? She seemingly doesn't hate the idea of it at all. Like, who knows? She could probably work towards the joke coming true. And just to see if he was hearing right, he asked her to repeat herself. But when she turned and glanced at him, she simply mentioned that it was a secret. Around noon that very same day, Amane burst through the hidden library's door as she apologized to Kazuma for forgetting his lunch today. But that was actually totally fine. Actually, he feels really bad always having her make lunch for him, so from now on, he wanted to mention that she didn't have to. But she stopped him right then and there because this was something she actually wanted to do. And if that's the case, then he asked if maybe she wouldn't mind if he treated her to lunch today at the cafeteria. Think of it as a thank you for everything that she's done for him. And this woman wasted no time as she asked him to open wide for the choo-choo train. But bro had to stop her right then and there because, you know, he can feed himself just fine. Not to mention they're attracting the curious stares of everyone around them. And honestly, he had completely forgotten that she's a popular voice actress now. So being alone together in such a public place could cause all kinds of trouble for them. But noticing a rice grain on his cheek, Amane swiftly went in to remove it, but thought it would be cute to eat it right in front of him. And without a doubt, everyone around them can't help but wonder if they're dating. But rushing on to the scene, someone finally had enough as they slowly raised their hand over Amane's head, with Rua damn near body slamming her into the table, and honestly just left her there to rot as the room descended into silence. Kazuma doesn't know what the hell's going on, Rua's absolutely fuming, and Amane might just be unconscious. But springing up from the table, Amane wanted to know what the hell Rua was doing. But honestly, this is what she gets for putting her hand on her man's. But Kazuma's not something that she could simply own, and besides, Amane needed to let her know that Kazuma absolutely despises her. Meanwhile, bro is standing on the sidelines, having absolutely no clue what's going on. And as Rua took a deep breath, she shouted that he absolutely does not. After all, they are childhood friends. But you know what it is? He's more than likely just embarrassed to say it, as she's pretty sure he's in love with her, to the point that he can't help but act mean. But in all fairness, Amane just thinks she's blind and delusional. And truly, Amane really has changed. To think that just a couple months ago, she'd freeze up just from the thought of Rua glaring at her. And now she's in the heat of battle, arguing with her as an equal. And upon further inspection, she might just be the only one who's able to talk back to her this much. But stepping onto the scene, someone had to let them know they were being unnecessarily loud, as Kocho believes the cafeteria to be a place for eating and relaxing, so they should both lower their voice. Yet as Rua's eyes darted in her direction, she had an interesting question for their president, asking if by any chance she wasn't wearing her badge. And when Kocho had mentioned that she wasn't, well then that would have been bad news. To think that the student council president, of all people, would break the school's rule. Like, how else is she supposed to set an example if she wasn't? But in Kocho's opinion, she personally believes that the badge system has a problem, completely taking Rua by surprise. And shortly after, a devious smile grew on her face, as she asked if she was sure she wanted to say that, since word on the street is that little Miss Amane over there had been in a real pickle because she didn't have one. So if the student council president herself kept walking around without one, who knows what might just happen to her? And immediately her words sent a chill down Kocho's spine, as she asked if that was supposed to be a threat. But Rua just walked right past her, while playing the fool, mentioning that she has no idea what she's talking about, before shortly after leaving the cafeteria altogether. And there was no doubt about it, that this pig was starting to run wild. So before she gets any more carried away, and something happens that can't be undone, Kazuma has to be the one to crush the system no matter what. Yo, it's your boy Noodles, and if you want more Pig Fiction, gang, check out this video right here on the screen. I think it's the one where this guy just wants to study, but all the girls around him want him. And with that, I'll see you guys on the other side.